Welcome everybody to the seasonal diet, eating what our ancestors ate when they ate it like we were evolved to do. So, now we're in July, seasonal diet, updates and tips. So pretty much everywhere in the northern hemisphere, we're now in the middle of summer and the abundant season. And things would have started to get a whole lot easier for our ancestors at this time of year. Of course, it depends on exactly where you're from. If your ancestors were from the south of Europe, for example, they would have had fruits and herbs growing already for a few months maybe. But in the cold, northern parts of Europe, or maybe up in the mountains, if that's where your ancestors are from, by the time we get to July, even in those places, there is pretty abundant food growing all around. If you don't believe me, check out my video from last year where even in Norway I was foraging in July, August time, and there was tons to eat everywhere, if you know what to look for. But there are a few commonalities in the diet that almost all of our ancestors would have had at this time of year. First thing, we're pretty much out of the season of the preserved foods. So the grains, the pickled vegetables, those kinds of things, jarred foods, jams, salted or dried meats, smoked stuff. No more of that stuff now until the winter time, really. There's no need for it, except some more warm places where there might actually be two seasons for grains. Some places that might already be harvesting grains in the early summer now and storing them away, the first wheats, the rye, the oats, those kinds of things in July time, so they might be eating that, but there's no real point eating a lot of it because there's so much other food growing around, and we want to save the things that can be preserved for the winter time when there's not that much food growing around. Another thing big in top season now is the fresh herbs. Early spring to the midsummer, the herbs like the chives, the mint, the thyme, the parsley are just a few of the most common ones. But now most herbs would be starting to sprout. So still in top herbal season, but we would also be drying and preserving a lot of the herbs at this time of year too. This has always been a tradition for humans to do at this time of year. As for the vegetables, we're definitely still in leafy green season. Things like the spinach, kale, lettuce, collard greens, arugula, things like that. But if the summer gets too hot and dry, those things don't grow very well. So it depends on where you're from. Other vegetables might start coming into season too, other than the leafy greens, like the avocados, the artichokes, tomatoes, zucchinis, corn, radishes. Those things all can start to come into season in the midsummer. Just be aware, a lot of those are native to other parts of the world outside of Europe. For the European ancestral diet, where most of your ancestors come from that you're watching, I can tell from the analytics, there's still not a whole lot of veggies in season for us yet. These come in the late summer and the fall mostly. So for vegetables, we're looking mostly at the leafy greens. As for the protein, livestock is still not a very big part of the traditional diet. That comes in the late summer and the fall for most of your ancestors, but they definitely did have more livestock meat in comparison to the spring, for example. Goat meat is actually in a lot of traditional dishes in the midsummer, especially in many places in the world, but especially in north of Europe. If we go back quite a while, we can see goat recipes in the midsummer traditions and feasts. Also, horse meat was a popular in the summertime before the Christians came in and made horse meat illegal. So definitely, if you have access to any horse meat, that's a good thing to eat in the summer. But the main thing is plenty of fish. Wild caught animals too, all throughout the summer. There would be hunted game, but especially fish if your ancestors lived near rivers, lakes, or oceans. Maybe some wild hunted birds for those of your ancestors that might be good with a bow or a spear. But yeah, we're still not in the season for a lot of livestock meat. We have to get a little bit more creative with things. It doesn't make sense to kill our livestock off in the summer when we're going to need it most in the winter. That's what the idea is in the ancient human diet. Also, plenty for the protein, plenty of animal products. So we're looking at the eggs, milk, cheese, creams, from cow or goat or sheep. Ancestors got a lot more variety in their dairy and animal products than we did today, so definitely we can get more protein then, because that's when the animals produce most of their milk or eggs, whatever. So definitely we can be upping the protein more so now in the midsummer than in previous months, and slowly increasing more protein, more animal products, and more meat as we get to the fall and winter time, when meat intake is at its peak. Finally, physique update to see how the body changes while eating seasonally. I'm staying about the same as I was last month, 100 kilos. Not putting on much because the workload right now, I'm training a lot, working a lot, and it's just hot out. I'm sweating a lot, just like our ancestors would have done, who have been high work on the farms at this time of year. So I'm really just leaning out and staying at the same weight, and I'll keep doing that for another month or two. And then towards the fall, I'll really be putting on some fat for the winter. So let's see how it goes. I'll have another month or so of cutting, and then it's time to get fat again. Six-pack is probably not going to happen this year. Just warning you about that. But yeah, that's all for today. Stay tuned next month for seasonal diet August updates.